Welcome into the Thimbleberry U podcast. I am John Jagay, joined again by Amy Walls from Thimbleberry Financial. Good to be back with you, Amy.
Great to be with you.
Today we're going to do a little 101 on RSUs. So I'm going to start with the most basic question I can possibly come up with, which is, what is an RSU?
An RSU is a restricted stock unit. It's a form of equity compensation. And we work a lot with clients in high tech. And this is a common way that they are compensated.
Okay.
It's a way to compensate employees that ties them to company performance and also to have them stay with the company. Have long-term interest in how the company does. So with an RSU, you're given a grant by your employer, and that's a certain number of shares of company stock. That stock, though, isn't worth anything at that time.
Okay.
All right. It will have value later on when it vests. And so what that looks like is perhaps that stock, if you received 100 shares, is going to vest over the next 4 years.
Okay.
So you'll be able to have access to 25 shares at year one, 25 shares at year two, and so on and so forth.
And so you have access to 100% of the whole thing after year 4 in this particular example.
Yes. Though that's not the only vesting schedule, right? They may vest monthly or quarterly or annually, and they may vest over 2 years or over 4 years. I've even seen some grants that clients have gotten that were just kind of a little bonus that all vest at 1 year.
This really is interesting to me, Amy, because you think about, especially, where Thimbleberry works with so many people in the tech field and so many companies, and a lot of competition between these companies to recruit and keep a lot of these specialized skilled workers. So I kind of see the appeal to the company and the idea of, okay, we're going to give you this stock, but it's not worth anything unless you stick around for a while. So I can totally see where that comes from. And what are your options when those RSUs vest?
Yeah, you really have 3 main choices. The first is to go ahead and just sell everything. Okay. Simple, clean, sell everything.
Yep.
Second would be to hold on to the shares. And here there's really 2 variations that can happen. One is that you just hold on to everything, and then you're going to need to come up with cash to pay the tax bill.
Okay.
And we'll talk about taxes here in a moment. The second option is that you can have shares withheld to cover the tax bill.
So you're not paying anything out of pocket. You're just giving up part of what you have there to cover the tax bill.
Absolutely. So in the example earlier that 25 shares vest, maybe 5 shares are withheld to cover what your normal withholding is on your paychecks, and you receive 20.
Okay, so let's get into the taxes here, Amy. What are the taxes on these RSUs and how do they look?
Yeah, this is a really important thing, and it's an area that I hear a lot of misconceptions from our prospective clients and even clients, and it's perpetuated in a lot of tech companies' chat rooms around money and such and around their benefits.
God, it's like the internet. Anything that's said on the internet can sometimes take a life of its own, right?
Yep. It's what before, there were all these chat rooms we called the water cooler talk or the coffee talk.
Right.
So there's a couple of important pieces you need to know to think about taxation on RSUs. One is grant date. That's the date you're given the award. Vest date is when a certain number of the shares actually become yours. And then the third date that you have to be aware of is the date you sell the stock. So at the point of vest, you're taxed on the income gained from what's vested. So, for example, let's say that you had 100 shares vest and they were $50 a share. You just had $5,000 of income come into you.
Okay, 100 shares at $50 a share. Okay, got it.
Yep, $5,000 come in. So you're going to pay tax, and ultimately it's ordinary income tax on that $5,000.
Right.
The second time you will be taxed is when you actually sell the stock.
Okay.
Perhaps you sold it at the time of vest. So then there isn't another point in time. But when you sell later on, you're taxed on the difference between what the share price was at the time it vested and the time you sold it.
Because that's essentially money that you've gained, because if the stock was worth $50 a share, but now it's worth $60 a share, that $10 for every share is now revenue or income for you.
Absolutely. And one of the things you have to know is that that's capital gains income. And so if you have held less than a year, that gain is treated as ordinary income. And if you hold more than a year, it's long-term capital gains, which is a preferential tax rate. Now, some people, as a result, jump to the conclusion that I must hold my RSUs a year to get this preferential tax rate. I would argue that's not necessarily the case.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is if your shares vest, let's say you sell them 2 days later, there may not have been much change in stock price.
Right. Okay.
Right? And so paying ordinary income because you're just trying to get rid of the shares and you want the cash is fine.
Okay.
But if you've held 6-8 months and there's been some volatility, then you may want to go ahead and hold the full year to have the reduced tax rate.
Got it.
So earlier I said this is an area there's a lot of misconception, and it's really about double taxation. What I regularly hear is I do have to hold a year or I will be taxed twice. You're essentially taxed twice no matter what. It's just they're different taxes.
Okay.
And off of different dollar amounts. But the misconception is that you're taxed at vest and then you're taxed again when you sell, and that when you sell, you're taxed again from zero. Not true. You're taxed just from the price at vest. The point I want to make is you're not taxed twice off of the full amount you received.
Okay.
That's what I hear. You're taxed first at vest off of the full amount, and then you're only taxed on the gain from that point forward.
And if you were to sell when you become vested, the gain is minimal because you haven't held it beyond that point, right?
Exactly. So an example of this is that if you receive 100 shares at $50 a share, $5,000 gain.
Right. Same example.
Yep. And you have shares sold to cover your tax burden. Let's say you keep 75 shares and 25 shares go to pay the tax burden.
Okay.
And then you sell those 75 shares when they're $51 a share, but they vested at 50. That second taxation, that capital gains rate, is only on $1 a share because that was your gain.
Your gain, not the initial price, not the price of the stock. You're paying the capital gains on what you gained, which would seem to reason.
Yes.
So it really is important to pay attention at all these different points in the timeline, when you're granted, when you vest, and when you sell them. Those are the three big ones, right?
It is.
So Amy, with all that in mind, let me ask you this. Should people hold or should they sell their RSUs?
That's a great question. I wouldn't have a job if there was a single answer to that. So, I probably sound like a broken record sometimes, but there's no answer that fits everyone. Everybody's situation is unique. We have clients that we recommend sell right away, and we have clients that we recommend they hold them.
Okay, why?
So some of it depends on what is their overall exposure to the company in the first place, right? How much other company stock do they already hold? Or do they maybe have incentive stock options or non-qualified stock options in addition to these RSUs?
Okay.
With those, they will expire at some point so that people have a certain time frame they need to do something. It may be beneficial to look at handling those types of stock awards and figure out how to diversify from them or use them before taking on another tax hit from RSUs.
Okay.
Especially with incentive stock options, because those are more complicated and have more tax consequences related to them, both ordinary tax and alternative minimum tax. Other things that we need to consider is, what does the family situation look like?
Sure.
Is the person single? Are they married? Are they the sole breadwinner or even the main breadwinner in the family? One of the things that can happen, and we see this a lot again because we do work in tech, and one of the ways people are compensated is through stock quite frequently, is that somebody can become over-concentrated in their employer's stock.
Okay.
And so that's a risk with any company when you're owning stock, but it becomes an extra big risk when you work for the company, because essentially your job is also creating risk with that company, is creating more exposure to that company. And so an example there, how this plays in, is there is a large tech firm that regularly does layoffs, and we see them do more in a downturn.
Sure.
As expected. But when that happens, their stock price is often down.
Yeah.
So if somebody's sitting on a lot of that company's stock and they now lose their job, they may need some of that stock for some, coverage during the gap while they find a new job, but their stock price is also down. So they've just been hit twice.
You're getting whacked at both ends, and it goes back to the proverbial eggs in one basket idea.
Yes. So we need to be a little bit more cautious about company stock, just because it is easy to have too many eggs in that basket.
Right. And something I know we say it every episode, Amy, but with every situation being different, and you really need to talk to a professional in this field. And at Thimbleberry, where you have so many tech clients, you deal with this kind of stuff. You deal with RSUs every day, which is why it's so important for somebody when they have questions to come in and talk to an expert. So what are the best ways to reach you, Amy?
Yep, they can give us a call, 503-610-6510, or go to our website, thimbleberryfinancial.com.
Excellent. Amy, enjoy your holidays, and we'll speak to you in January.
Sounds great. You too, Jag.
Registered representative. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisor representative. Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Thimbleberry Financial are not affiliated. Cambridge does not offer tax or legal advice. Thimbleberry Financial is located at 650 Northeast Holiday Street, Suite 1600, Portland, Oregon, 97232.